Hello. Over the weekend, I got a chance to look at some files from the lawsuit, and I just love this stuff. And I haven't had the opportunity to do anything with legal stuff since I graduated from grad school. So I thought, as soon as I have a good day at school, I haven't had the opportunity to. As soon as I have a good day at school, I'm gonna actually live stream and go over the documents because it's funny, and I'm into the stuff I read on was it Sunday or Saturday? It was just hysterical. If you a couple of caveats here. I'm not a trained lawyer. I'm not criminal or civil. I always thought I'd be a lawyer when I was a kid because, as my parents like to say, I love to argue. And I did start a criminal justice major when I first went to college, but for reasons that are unrelated, I just ended up not going into that. I became a teacher instead. But as part of my graduate degree, whenever I had a chance to write a big paper, I would always immediately okay, how can I use trials? Like I've always been obsessed with trials. One of the papers I wrote, I actually got to translate stuff out of its original French because it was a French trial, and so I've been reading legal opinions my entire academic career. At any point I could get my hands on I could write a paper about trials, I would. So I have a lot of experience reading this stuff and making sense of it. And teachers, we have to make sense of gibberish all the time because we teach. So what I've done is put together the 3 documents I have that are publicly available that were released by media. This stuff costs money to get, and this is entertaining, but it's not entertaining enough for me to spend my money on. Like I said, I'm a teacher. I make $38,000 after taxes. No, thank you. I think we can get what we need. I mean, there's stuff I would kill to see, but not pay to see. And we'll talk about it as we go through it. So I have 3 documents. The original lawsuit as it was originally filed. I know it's been amended since, but I haven't found the amendments. ABC's request for a summary judgment, and I'll talk about what that is. And then Ingo Rademacher's request for it to oppose the summary judgment, oppose ABC winning it. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. Where did I put it? All right, so this is the case docket on the Superior Court of California County of Los Angeles. It's telling you the counting information. So this is the case number. So if you want to look it up for yourself, that would be the case number, lacourt.org. It is Ingo Rademacher, and I am pronouncing it the way that I always pronounce it. I have no idea if it's pronounced differently. Versus American Broadcasting Companies, which is a Delaware corporation, and Stanley Mosk. Oh well, I've just heard that courthouse for other things. So it was filed on December 13th, 2021, which I believe would be around a month or 2 months after they had to do their vaccinations, and it's still pending. Here are the hearings. So we're actually March 30th is next Wednesday, and that's the next hearing. That is a hearing on a motion for summary judgment. And then on April 21st, they have a final status conference, which is kind of they get all their ducks together and they go in and they're like, are we really going to trial? Are we doing this? And if we are doing this, let's get it together. Because most civil cases actually settle because, it costs a lot of money to go to trial. Last year, I'm sure everybody was aware that, there was the 6 weeks of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. That's actually not the norm. That's not how these things go. Most of these things settle. And then May 1st would be a jury trial. I kind of want a jury trial. I'm so serious. I would love a jury trial. So that's kind of where we are there. And this is the party information. This is all the people who are repping. So attorneys for the defendant, attorneys for the plaintiff, and there's some stuff there. And then here are all the documents that have been filed on the dates that they got filed. So there's a lot of paperwork in this case. I don't know if this would be normal. I don't look this stuff up all that much, but it's interesting. So, and then if you wanted to order the documents, this is also where you could go I think it's $1 per page up to a maximum of 40, but I might not be sure about that. I've never ordered one of these. I think the only thing I would, if I were going to spend money on this, if there were interest, is that I would maybe I would get the minute order. So the minute order it's a smaller order, and it's just here is what I have. Here's the judge's motion. So if that whatever happens after that hearing, we would get the judge has dismissed this, or this is not So I think I'd probably pay the $5 to get that, depending on how long it would be, something like that. So we'll see. It is. I doubt this. I don't think this is being streaming anywhere. You would think it'd get a little bit of coverage because of COVID-19, soap opera, Disney, but I'm also not that surprised it's not getting any coverage. So it is what it is. But I'm hopeful that we'll get at least, so, we'll find out. All right. So let's get up with the first document. Let me go back and find, sorry. It would be this one here. So this has the watermark of unfiled, and it's because it looks like this was sent to deadline before they actually filed it. I double checked it with the, so if you go to here, you can actually see how long everything is. And so the original complaint, which would be this one right here, is 10 pages. This is 10 pages. So this is likely to be the original. So we have here individual plaintiff for this, and then does 1 through 10. That's just sometimes they do that. And then complaint for violation of civil rights. So he's actually suing because he thinks his civil rights have been violated, and he's requesting a jury trial. So the way these lawsuits work is you have an introduction which sets out all of the stuff, and then it goes into other stuff that goes. We'll get there as we get there. Introduction lays out like the story. So, and of course we're going back and we're starting with COVID-19. Yay! Aren't we? So early 2020, the world discovered a new novel coronavirus, COVID-19. Governments responded with the most draconian restrictions in modern history. Already, that's an opinion, a little bit. It's an opinion, so you can and we'll get into why this lawsuit is particularly interesting, because I did a little research into the attorneys, or at least the main attorney who has signed off on this. And this guy is known for being anti-vax, and there are some rumors that Mr. Rademacher, alleged, is being funded by a third party who believes in medical freedom, aka no vaccinations and no passports for that, whatever. They banned travel and prosecuted churches. It's like, no, sir, that's not really what else. Cool. They decided which activities were essential and which weren't. That's kind of what we do as government, whatever. So over time, life started returning to normal as everybody expected. In the meantime, several experimental shots were developed to help limit the effects. The shots developed under the Trump administration were so controversial that many Democratic politicians would not commit to taking them. They also promised not to force them on the American people. I don't remember that, actually. Does anybody else remember that? Maybe I was paying attention to a different thing. I'm a teacher, so I was definitely paying attention to the vaccines. I was very nervous about returning to school without vaccines because as a teacher, I get sick every 5 minutes. The children are rife with disease. In fact, since the kids are no longer masking up, I've been sick almost every month this year as my immune system readjusts to 2 years without the children coughing on me. So here I am, so line 11. This was no surprise, as America has not seen broad vaccine mandates for adults since the early 20th century, when infectious diseases were the world's leading cause of death. So that's broadly true. We've not had, to the best of my knowledge. So then that's for a couple of reasons. So we haven't had in the 20th century any large scale, massive outbreaks like this. Before this, a big thing was polio, the polio vaccine. And I remember reading about the polio vaccine because it was a scourge. Basically, even Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, he was a childhood polio, right? And polio was terribly, you could die from it, you could be paralyzed from it, it would really mess up your life. And so when the vaccine was actually developed in the 1950s and released, people were lining up for it. They wanted this. This was, to the best of my knowledge, and there's also the idea that the media was different. So opposition, to the extent that it existed, was unable to organize in the way that you can in the age of global worldwide media, if that makes sense. So social media. But so that's one of the reasons that there haven't been broad vaccine mandates, is we haven't actually needed them to the extent that I think, needed this one, because we haven't had an epidemic. The pandemic. This is the first pandemic that's hit the United States since 1919, and that was the flu virus. And that was they called it Spanish influenza, even though it came from Kansas. A whole other story. And there was no vaccine for the flu. I mean, of course, we have a flu shot, but that wasn't really that wasn't a thing back then. So no, we haven't. I think it's just one of those things. If you know a little bit about the history, that line makes you want to stab people. But anyway, all right. So we're on section 3. The vaccine debate became increasingly politicized during 2021. That's true. Although it was never clear the shots were doing anything. It's some bullshit right there. Federal officials admitted that vaccinated people could still contract and transmit COVID-19. Some politicians decided the pandemic would not end until every American got the shot. That's not true either. To that end, new President Joe Biden expressed frustration that more people were not getting the shots. He did express that frustration. And many large corporations, wishing to please the administration, decided to start forcing the the shots from the workers. The thing about these introductions is it lays out the argument in a way that is most advantageous to the plaintiff. So this is the story from the Ingo's point of view. And this is definitely like if you were sipping this particular dose of Kool-Aid, this is definitely how it must have felt to you guys that you were being forced on you. That's where I think Disney's going to have an interesting conversation as it did. So I think that ABC was one of the few that really made it network mandated. Because I remember General Hospital was the only soap to do it that way because ABC was the only major network, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know that it was wishing to please the administration. I think it was wishing to like get on with life because it was really difficult to kind of get back to the way things were. I don't think that we would be where we are if the vaccine hadn't dramatically slowed things down. But that's also just like, we don't have the hindsight of history yet. So talk to me in 10 years, right? We don't know what we don't know until history has written the story. And it'll be interesting to see how we look at this, the really effectiveness. But that's not what this is. I'm just going through this. I'm just telling you from my point of view, where I think that there are spaces in here where, like, right, for example, 2 and 3, this is incredibly opinionated. And I think that if you wanted to fight it, it would be on these places because there's definitely arguments to the contrary for 3 and 4, points 3 and 4. So point 4, the media is being the most aggressive in mandating the COVID-19 shots for its employees, which makes sense because the media, especially if you're in the news or if you're in soap operas, you're working with lots of people, things are in and out. So it actually makes sense that media and entertainment business has been really into the testing and, whatnot. So during the summer of 2021, ABC, which is owned by Disney, ordered anybody working on a television show had to get COVID-19. It was the mandate. All right, so step 5 here. So that's all of the COVID stuff. So we're getting into Ingo. So Rademacher is an actor. He's been part of the cast soap since for 25 years. Please stop saying this, actors, because it makes you sound like you've been on for 25 years. And you really haven't, my good sir. You were on from 1996 to 2000, and then you were on from 2001, and then it was 2000. And you came back in 2001, and then you were there until I believe 2000. Like he's been there more than he hasn't, but like he hasn't been there a full 25 years. It's the same thing. Like yes, you've been. It's not important. I'll get back to it. He requested a religious exemption to the COVID vaccine, and although ABC said it would grant exemptions for sincerely held religious objections, it refused to accept Rademacher's request. He actually attached the email where he wrote this. And this is where I'm a little interested in how this, I wonder if there's going to be more info this. I would love to know more about this. So here's how they, in his view, handled his request. He had a half hour of cross-examination about his religious beliefs and then denied his exemption request without explanation. I'm interested in that. They go into a little bit more detail in the third document, but I think it's kind of interesting and I think it's mostly because to the best of my knowledge, I only know of one religion that is not in favor of science. I know that Christian scientists they don't believe in a lot of medicine. I know that specifically, I'm sure that there are others out there. I was just unaware of any mainstream ones. So there's that. ABC's actions are blatantly unlawful. ABC does not have the authority to force a medical treatment on its employees against its will. And even if it did, it must offer religious exemptions to the forced treatment to anybody that requests one. It cannot discriminate among religions and cannot second guess the sincerity of one's religious beliefs. That's kind of where I'm like, yeah, I think that that's probably where he has a decent. I think that if there is an argument to be made, if it is true that he was supposed to have had access to a religious exemption, I'm curious to how the law works for that. So we'll talk about that's just I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm just interested in how the law looks at that because I do think it's interesting when you start investigating religious beliefs. I think you're in really dicey territory. While I don't personally I don't think that's why I don't really believe in religious, separation. It's the whole thing. I just think it's interesting. I think it's a very interesting line to draw, but there's that. So it is constitute of religious discrimination and violates his rights under state and federal law. All right. So 7, furthermore, like all Californians, he has a right to bodily integrity and a right to refuse medical treatment, which is true. And he says the COVID vaccine mandate violates. He also has a right to informational privacy. ABC violated those rights by forcing him to disclose his personal medical information to continue working on GH. And he brings this action to hold them accountable. So a couple of things. So it's kind of interesting that we're back here talking about how things can't be like that COVID can't be, you can't mandate certain things. And like, yeah, you can. You just have the consequence. There are consequences for not doing it. So, for example, as a teacher, I had to have a TB test. They're really annoying. I couldn't tell you when I went to London for a year. I know I had to get a visa, and I'm pretty sure I had to produce my medical vaccination records. I don't remember there being an issue because like my mother got me every single vaccination on the law. So I just because I want to make sure if there's anybody. Ange came in, so hi Ange. Um, yeah, so that's a good point. Let me pull this up. Sorry, I have one monitor, so I'm looking at the chat screen on my iPad, and it's not connected to my StreamYard. So now I'm trying to find where my StreamYard is. We're professionals here. Yeah, so this was a good point. So Anne brought this up. We have a lot of church friends who refused to vaccinate, but it wasn't church or religion mandated. Yeah, so I'm vaccinated. My school system did not demand it. It just said if you did not, you had to come in and be tested every week, which was fine. My sister worked for Rutgers at the time, and they didn't mandate it either, but you had to be tested, and she had to go onto campus to do it, and she was just lazy, so she got vaccinated for that. Like nowhere I know actually fired anybody for not being vaccinated. So I think, but I'm not saying that my experience is the norm. I'm just saying that strongly encouraged, but people refuse. You can't force people to accept science. You just can't. I mean, if we could, Galileo would have had a lot, never mind. That's not important. Sorry. That's a tangent. All right. So I just wanted to highlight that, and then let me get back to this. All right. So this next part is it's parties, jurisdiction, and venue, and this is all procedural stuff. And so it's like the plaintiff is this guy, the defendant is this person, and here's where he tells you. So remember I said it was defendant's does 1 through 10? And so he doesn't know necessarily who actually orchestrated the decision, and he wants to reserve the ability to amend his complaint as they go through discovery and as he gets more information. So the individuals who are relevant were officials, agents, or employees. So like Frank Valentini, who would be the EP, he'll come up in another document later. Their identities are not known, and they are sued fictitiously, and that's incredibly common. And he'll amend the complaint. So I imagine that the amended complaints that have come out have been amended to identify those John Does. All right, so factual allegations. So this is where we kind of get into, the more basics. So just more like, here's a repeat of the COVID thing. Here's another opinionated thing. Well, I don't know. So it depends on how you look at it. So, though nobody knew it at the time, the COVID-19 pandemic would lead to the greatest restrictions on liberty in American history. No and yes. So okay, let me have I parse this responsibly. I believe the greatest restriction on liberty in American history was that time we enslaved people for 400 years. Just throwing that out there, sir. But I respect that you are from not this country. I don't remember where you're from. Are you Austrian? I just know you're not Australian because Jackson's supposed to be Australian, so you're from somewhere in Europe. I don't really. It's a German last name, so it could be German in Austria. Maybe you don't know that, but like your lawyer sure as fuck should. So I'm gonna tell you how you can't go outside. Never happened. That was not that. Okay, we can't get bogged down in this. I'm just saying, the greatest restriction on liberty in American history was 400 years of enslaving people. Just throwing that out there. Many of the restrictions started in California, and that's probably because of it being on the West Coast. I remember when COVID-19 was first starting here in New Jersey, we were like, well, it's in Washington, but like that's 3,000 miles away. And then, we shut down. Unprecedented mass closures of businesses and criminalization of ordinary activities that unelected health officials deemed too dangerous. That's unelected shit. Like we don't elect every. Okay, I'm not gonna. It's fine. Whatevs. Moving on. During 2020, at the urging of then President Donald Trump, several pharmaceutical companies began developing experimental treatments. So we started working on vaccines. Although these treatments were called vaccines, they do not meet the definition of a vaccine under federal law. I got questions. These are experimental gene modification therapies, something more akin to a medical treatment than a vaccine. Sure. All right. The COVID-19 shots were so controversial that then President Joe Biden would not commit to receiving one because they didn't know anything yet. They weren't available yet. Like you don't want. I'm not gonna. Like you can. I'm not gonna commit to something that doesn't exist. I want to know more information. Donald Trump has a. I don't want to be political on this, but it's like he didn't exactly hire the best people. Okay, so I don't. Who is he put in charge of this? What is it? Son-in-law who was supposed to find world peace? It's not important. Moving on, my life. Yeah, so like people were like, I did not trust the Trump administration would review the treatment of infants. Like, all right, fine. And then President Mr. Biden run the presidency and the tune changed. Yes, because more people trusted Joe Biden, and that's kind of why he won. It's like how elections work. They didn't trust Joe. Whatever. I don't want to be political. I'm just stating a fact. Is that that's how elections work? Is that the guy who the people trust to run the country wins, and the guy who people do not trust the country usually loses. I'm not talking about 2000 and George Bush. Like, that's just a whole other problem. He said he would not mandate. And by the way, that's true. Joe Biden has never mandated it. He has strongly encouraged it. He has, done all kinds of stuff that, really, motivate people to do it. So there are 3 which have been approved for emergency use by the FDA: Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. God, those names, bringing back memories. By summer of 2021, I like how they've changed it here. Tens of millions of Americans have chosen to take the COVID-19 therapies. Okay, moving on. We're not going to do that. They did so by choice, not coercion. But COVID-19 had not disappeared. This should not have surprised anyone. Yeah, because that's not okay. I'm not a medical doctor, but even I know that that's not how it works. Public health officials have repeatedly said that eliminating a respiratory virus is impossible once it begins spreading. Yes, so what you do is you have ways to minimize the spread. You have ways to minimize the actual the way that the virus actually affects your body. Like, there are things you can do. According to one prominent I know how to say this word, so give me a minute. It's just been a long day speaking French. Epidemiologist, there it is. Eradicating this virus right now from the world is it's a lot like trying to plan the construction of a stepping stone pathway to the moon. It's unrealistic. Yeah, I don't think anybody ever, and that's where we get into unrealistic expectations. I don't know anybody who's reasonable and has any kind of understanding of how the world works and how medicine works and how diseases work, ever thought that once this had become pandemic that we were ever going to have a moment where it's completely gone. You know what? Even smallpox isn't gone. Polio is not gone. Diseases don't really disappear. They can be eradicated, but there's, I think smallpox is actually coming back somewhere. So, so anybody can still contract and spread the COVID-19 virus, but like the flu, COVID-19 is becoming endemic. The world will have to learn to live with it as we live with many other pathogens. We have learned to live with it, but one of the big reasons we've been able to learn to live with it is that the COVID vaccines have slowed it, and that the increasing it's been different weaker. But we also don't know a lot of the long-term stuff. And like I said, I'm not going to get into it, but as a teacher, I wanted to be more familiar with the research because I want to feel comfortable going back into a classroom. I have chosen to teach unmasked because I teach French and I have to work. The students need to see my mouth. It is what it is. And I have made that decision knowing that I probably would be better off masked. And okay, I've been sick a lot. It is what it is. I've made that personal decision and I'm not blaming the rest of the world for it. I got my vaccinations. I got my boosts. I did everything I was supposed to. And when I finally got COVID, because the kids finally got me this year, January, it was 3 days of the worst flu I've ever had. And then I was tired for 2 weeks. You know what? It would have been a lot worse 2 years ago. Anyway, I get mad reading this all over again because we all lived through this in 2020. It was exhausting then. That includes people who've received one of the COVID-19 shots, although the shots have been declared a miracle by many. The Department of Health and Human Services Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services recently admitted that the duration of vaccine effectiveness in preventing COVID-19, reducing disease severity, reducing the risk of death, and the effectiveness of the vaccine to prevent disease transmission by those vaccinated are not currently known. No, because it's still in its early stages. Sometimes you take things just on a prayer. I want it to be right. I am interested. So he's quoted some people here, right? You see these quotations. Normally, when I see these complaints, you will see a footnote. And that is true in a legal documentation as well as it's one prominent epidemiologist speaking to Nature magazine. Which one, sir? I have questions. Curiosities, really. I'd like to know which one. I'm not saying it's not. I just want to know where that was published. I'd like to see where this was published and if there's a context to this. And that's one of the reasons why, even, as an academic, when I was in grad school, we had to include, if you quoted somebody, you had to tell me where that quote was from. And this hasn't been footnoted. All right. And if I'm looking down here, there's no footnote. So, all right. So there's that. So 21, despite this evidence, many American politicians and business leaders have decided that injecting everybody with one of the COVID-19 shots is the only way to end the pandemic. Yeah, people get to decide that, it's just that they get to decide that. So this is, again, ABC's mandated. So ABC has never required that actors get a vaccine to shoot a TV show. Um, that's right, likely because this kind of situation has never happened before. They've never even inquired about private medical information because they just haven't. ABC said it would respect an individual's sincere religious, objection. So he submitted a written request for a religious exemption, and here is the one exhibit, and we're going to actually go right to it because I think it's hysterical in a lot of ways. So this is Ingo, October 11th, 2021, which is interesting because wasn't this mandate in August? Why are you setting it on October 11th? So whom it may concern, my name is Ingo Rademacher, and I'm a contract player / actor on the ABC daytime drama series General Hospital, portraying the character of Jasper Jax, quotation marks Jax. I am entitled to a religious exemption against mandatory vaccination for COVID-19 on the basis that of my deeply and sincerely held moral belief that my body is endowed by my creator with natural processes to protect me, and that its natural integrity cannot be ethically violated by the administration of artificially created copies of genetic material foreign to nature and experimental. This moral objection is in keeping with my rights of conscious I swear to God, I have a college education. I'm just tired. Articulated by the United States Supreme Court in Welsh v. U.S. 1970, and that's the case citation. I imagine that they actually cite this case somewhere in the complaint will look. Discrimination against me on the basis of my religious values and rights of conscience are contrary to law and the Civil Rights Act. Disparate treatment of me on this basis is not permitted under state and federal law. Kind regards. And I'm going to imagine he sent this knowing it was going to be I just feel like this. I just think this is interesting. It's worded interestingly. That's all I'm saying. All right. And Ange was leaving, but she said most people are vaccinated in school, so no need to be vaccinated on the set. As you said, that this is completely new. Yeah. So most people are vaccinated, so we don't have to really most people. In order to attend a public school in the United States, you have to have certain shots. I don't remember off the top of my head what they are because I have had them. I'm sure the measles shot is probably one of them now. The measles, chickenpox. The chickenpox shot was not a thing when I was a kid because I was a kid in the early 90s and I definitely got chickenpox. I don't know. My mom just got me all my vaccines, so I have literally no idea what vaccines I got, and I'm fine. I know I got the hepatitis B shots, and that's because my mother never took me out of school for a doctor's appointment. She scheduled it the day after Christmas, and I know that's not relevant, but I'm just saying. So I don't even know I just know I was vaccinated against the things you're supposed to be vaccinated against, and that's just something that happens. In order to attend a public school, you have to have your vaccine shot. You have to have vaccines, and that's not normally an issue. So when there was conversations about schools mandating it, right? It was, well, it's probably going to be fine because we already mandate other vaccines. All right, so let me go back to where we were. All right, here we are. So that was 23. So 24. Rather than accept Mr. Rademacher's request for a religious exemption, ABC scheduled an interview between Mr. Rademacher and an ABC employee to discuss his request. Although ABC described the interview as an interactive process, I wish it was taped, I would watch that. Denied Mr. Rademacher's request, I have an attorney attend the meeting. The interview was conducted by a lawyer who works for Disney Human Relations and was more akin to a cross-examination designed to elicit information that they could use to deny the request for an exemption. I kind of find that interesting. I'd like to see how ABC characterizes it because, of course, everything that this lawyer writes is going to be putting the plaintiff in the best light. Because if you just read this and you don't know anything, right? If you don't know anything, that sounds. And honestly, I don't know. That sounds kind of shitty. I think that if you're if you are requesting an exemption for something and you're being questioned by a lawyer, kind of just think maybe it's not requested, maybe it's not needed. I just think it'd be nice if someone, if you could have your lawyer. I think it's interesting. I'm not saying it was wrong. I find it intriguing. I'd like to know more. I'd like to see how ABC would, characterize that. On November 5th, they officially denied the request for religious exemptions and terminated his contract to perform on General Hospital. They knew they were going to do it because, to the best of my knowledge, Steve Burton, who was also fired for the same reason, which I want to comment on because I find that very interesting that they're not mentioning this at all, because it's kind of interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute why. I believe that they were gone the next day. I'd have to look at exactly when, but they aired on the same day, so it was all done the same day. These actions were unlawful. Once ABC decided to recognize exemptions to its vaccine mandate, it had to honor all of them. I think it's an interesting argument that who gets to decide what's a religious exemption, and I guess I don't know. Like I said, it's interesting. I'm curious. I think it's a religion. I think it's a bullshit exemption. But I'm intrigued on what basis do you tell somebody that's not what you believe? Because again, I just think it's really boggy territory to be telling somebody that that's not a religious belief. I don't know. It feels icky to me. Like if you take out the COVID crap, if you take out the fact what the religious exemption would be for, it feels icky. That's all. This should not be a political issue. There's no need for everybody to get the COVID-19 shot, even if the president demands it. The president didn't demand it, sir. So it's just a weird shot at him. Furthermore, Mr. Rademacher has a right to privacy and a right to object to compulsory medical treatment based on his sincere religious beliefs. Lawsuits decided 100 years ago do not change that. Interesting. I don't know what that is. I wonder if that's related to Typhoid Mary. I'll talk about what that is in a minute if you want. It is time for a court to apply the law even-handedly to recognize that human rights have evolved since the early 20th century. Yeah, this is definitely referring to Typhoid Mary, I would think. I'll talk about what that is in a minute. And the medicine has improved so much that forced medical treatments are no longer necessary or appropriate to protect public health. Moreover, the government should not be in the position of cross-examining people about their religious beliefs. Kind of agree there, but again, ABC should know that. It could have refused all requests. It declined, having chosen to recognize some exemptions. They must recognize any good faith request. Something to be thought. Again, if it weren't about COVID, I'd feel better about it. But you're either, I don't know. He brings his actions to protect and seek damages. He applied the right to sue letters. He applied for the right to sue letters from the federal and state governments and will amend his complaint to allege workplace discrimination once he obtains permission to bring those claims. Because I think he does amend it later because there's stuff later on that are not in this. So these are the causes of actions. They just kind of repeat. So it's what exactly did he violate? So he violation of Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution against all defendants. So this is what it is. So individuals have a right to privacy under California Constitution. This state law, which was added by voters in 1972, is far brighter. Okay, so this is a specific California law. It's the broadest privacy right in America and has been interpreted to protect both an individual's right to informational privacy and right to bodily integrity. That's interesting. I'm interested in seeing how ABC interprets that. California Supreme Court has confirmed this as a state constitutional right and can be enforced both against the government and against private parties. All right. So so we've already talked about this. It employed ABC for 25 years. And okay, so it is not the only entertainment company that adopted a COVID vaccine mandate. Like many companies, ABC instituted the mandate because the government said it wants universal or close to universal vaccination. Thus, okay, it's interesting. I don't remember. Interesting. All right, so this is just this is a pretty basic one. So later he's going to allege that he was discriminated against because of his political beliefs related to the bullshit he posted. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I know he must have amended that somewhere else along the line, but I don't have that copy. So he has suffered damages that would exceed $25,000, and he wants ABC to pay for his attorney fees. So here is his prayer for relief. This is basically what is he asking for? In order to say that this vaccine mandate was unconstitutional, compensatory damages in an amount to be proven at trial, and for costs and attorneys. So this guy, Scott J. Street, is he's written for the Federalist. He claims to be a Democrat, but he talks about COVID-19 tyrants. So he is definitely there. And he demands a jury trial, and then that's Exhibit A, and that's what we just read. So that is his original complaint on December 13th. Lots of stuff happens between then and now. So, this is everything that happens between now. So he definitely amends it and changes it later. This was filed on, when was this filed? Yeah, so it was filed on last year, December 28th. And this is filed by ABC. So defendant ABC memo of points and authorities in support of its motion for summary judgment. So summary judgment is basically, and each party I believe is asking for a summary judgment. It's basically both parties are saying, we don't believe the other has the evidence that needs to go to trial. We want you to rule for us right now. And that's basically, they're each asking for that. And that's what's going to happen on March 30th, which is next Wednesday. So this is ABC, so 9 a.m. God, I wish it were Zoomed. Man, I would kill for it, but probably not. All right, so this is a table of contents. You can already see it's only 26 pages, but it's very everything that's going. So looking back, the COVID-19 pandemic, the vaccine policy, Rademacher's roles as Jack. I haven't read this at all, so I'm very interested. So his roles as Jax on General Hospital, his bare bones accommodation request, and his subsequent refusal to engage in the interactive discussion about his religious beliefs. And they put religious in quotations. I love you, ABC. I'm sorry. It's not appropriate. I apologize. Okay. His beliefs are personal or ideological, not religious. And that's very interesting. These are lifestyle choices. And look at this. They italicized mandates. It's just the level of like, they've done nothing wrong here, but just like the little quotation marks and the italicizing of words that they chose not to use. It's snark. It's beautiful. And I'm here for it. He has no evidence of political animus or retaliation to the decision to terminate his employment. And so this is statement of undisputed facts. I love it. I love it already. I don't know if it usually says undisputed facts, but I would kill if it doesn't. And then here's the argument. So here's why they're saying that everything he says. So his first cause, he added other causes. Yeah. So he added other causes. Okay. So that's what that is. All right. So they're going to go into that. He added a fifth claim. So a fourth claim is not here. So it must have been dismissed at some point. And then he's definitely amended it. I would love to get the amendment. Man, I wish I made more money. Dear New Jersey, pay me more so I can spend it frivolously on lawsuit documents. Thank you. Okay. So, and this is the table of authorities. Here is what I was really interested, because when I first thought about reading this out loud, I was like, I'm really interested in reading his initial lawsuit because he has to set out the case law, right? And he cites it once, but he doesn't really go into it. And that's always interesting when they'll cite a case, but now you either have to go look it up or trust that their interpretation. It's just interesting. They have actually cited a whole lot of case law, which usually gives you kind of the feeling, at least you get the feeling that case law is probably on ABC's side, which doesn't surprise me. Not that corporations don't usually do anything wrong. I mean, it's not that they don't do anything wrong. It's just that there usually tends to be a lot of case law backing them up when they do their things. Here are a bunch of statutes. Holy crap. All right. So, introduction. So, plaintiff employment was terminated in November 2021 because he refused to get vaccinated against the virus, which was a condition of continued employment under defendant their vaccine policy. In his second complaint, he seeks a relief under a panoply, that's a beautiful word, of legal theories: invasion of privacy, religious and disability discrimination, and political retaliation. None of these claims survives the scrutiny as a matter of law in light of the uncontroverted material facts presented by ABC. Summary for disposition should be granted. So basically you should say, he's an idiot, peace out. That's kind of, shortening it up there. So here are the statements of undisputed facts, all right? These are satisfied declarations, deposition transcripts, and authenticated documents. I would love to get all of that information because there are some text messages where I think Valentini calls Ingo an asshole or something along those lines. And my God, I would sell my firstborn child to read it. Like, I don't love Frank Valentini because I don't think he does very well as an EP, but I'm okay with him not liking Ingo. Like, we're like that, sir. From almost the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Disney and ABC instituted a rigorous and comprehensive effort to protect the health and safety. They shut down everything. So there's a bunch of declarations they're citing. So these are things that are already in the trial record. This would be in the records that we don't have. Early on in the pandemic, on the advice of experts, these measures included masking, physical distance, and testing, which is what they had available to them at that point. In July of 2021, the Delta variant, which was more infectious, I remember when that happened, and that was a dominant strain. So they decided that, and then by this point, they had the vaccine. So fortunately, by then, we had 3 different ones. And again, they're citing some stuff that's already in the record. The data received and considered by Disney supported and still does that vaccines are the most effective strategy for mitigating infections, hospitalizations, and death. And that's like mostly conclusive, like true if you actually look at the rates, is that while rate of infections they've gone down, but they're not disappeared, but the rate of death has gone down quite a lot. And that's kind of a big thing. So the data also indicated that unvaccinated people were much more likely to get infected, face more serious consequences, and transmit the virus for others. So it wasn't that you would get a get-out-of-jail-free card if you got the vaccine, but you would have a better chance of being get out of jail. Like, again, I taught for 3 years with middle school children, and I didn't get a head cold the first year we were doing hybrid. I got like 2 colds last year at all. It's only this year when the kids have been unmasked, because we didn't unmask until March, that I've been getting sick again. and I finally got COVID. I did not get COVID, and my immune system, as you can tell, lays out to welcome that. So that makes sense. So according to one study released by the Centers for Disease Control, unvaccinated individuals were 5 times more likely to be infected with the COVID-19. So this is them saying, like, listen, here's everything we know. Here is the big reasons why we decided we wanted a vaccine policy. So that's all makes sense. So they're laying out all the facts before they did their vaccine policy. On July 30th, after careful consideration, the big wigs at Disney said all salaried and non-union hourly employees working on site to be fully vaccinated. So it's not just television shows; it was basically everybody. And there was also the application for union employees, because that has to go through a different process. They need to do collective bargaining, and so they have a declaration for saying that they got the agreement of SAG-AFTRA, which is the union, the Screen Actors Guild Award, and American Federation of something. ABC so did that. So Dominic Nuzzi, I want to read. That is as a producer on the set. So ABC said that this would apply to GH. So that was September 3rd, 2021. Okay. Why did I think we knew that? You know what? That was around the time that the rumor started swirling that Steve Burton was refusing the vaccine. And I remember thinking, son of a bitch. You know, it's like it's a character you've watched for like 25 years, or no, like my entire life, basically. And it turns out you're an idiot. And I'm like, why are you an idiot? Like, how I liked it better before we had social media and we knew what they were like. All right, so the vaccine policy was the product of an extensive deliberative process. And I hope you're noticing already that this has a different writing. This just feels more, I don't know, the writing on this is just better, if that makes sense. And it's not because I'm inclined one way or the other. I just think the writing on this is better. It has, and you know, they're really citing more facts. I mean, there's not more facts. They're citing more documents as backup. Ultimately, among additional reasons, Disney determined that the vaccine policy was necessary given the unique emergency created by, especially with the Delta variant. All right, so allowing any employee to decide to instead to just a mask and socially distance and periodic testing was not adequate to meet the urgent health and safety priorities. And that was this was also true in the Disney parks. Required everybody to be vaccinated by November 1st, unless they qualified for a religious and medical exemption, will be considered on a case-by-case basis, taking into consideration the specific circumstances. Like, I think that there were definitely people who could not get the vaccine for medical reasons because of the way the vaccine was dealt with. I know that was definitely an issue. And immunocompromised. Like, there were reasons some people couldn't get the vaccine. To request an exemption, an employee had to complete an accommodation request. After receiving the completed form, employees would be contacted by the Employee Relations Department, ER, to discuss their request and obtain more information about the employee's job duties, and if applicable, religious beliefs, adherence to that belief, and how the belief prevented them from receiving the vaccine. So, and then following this process, ER would decide to, you know, if we do it. So now we get into the relationship with, all right. So General Hospital is a daytime soap opera that premiered in 1963. Yay, ABC still knows that GH is on their network. Isn't that? We have legal proof that they know, because sometimes I wonder. Declaration of Frank Valentini. So that's how you know, like they're going to cite everything. Rademacher played the role of Jasper Jax. Like many long-running soap operas, it's common for characters to appear, reappear, and disappear, and reappear based on storylines. Chris Van Etten, aka the most terrible head writer in history. I'm sorry, that's rude. He's the head writer, I guess. Jax was no exception. Hey, thank you. And they're not even going all the way back. They're just going like recent history. Like, he was gone from 2013 to 2016. He was gone for another 6 months here, and then he was gone for two years here. And I know he was gone for about a year between 2000. He left in August 2000. He came back in August 2001. Because I remember he abandoned Chloe in fucking Paris because he saw a girl who had looked like Brenda from the back. And it turns out that was Brenda, but like he didn't know that. And that's because he had been cast on this really ridiculous show on NBC that got canceled after like 3 episodes. His most recent stint started in 2019. In February, he executed a 3-year contract, 156 weeks, which each year broken down into 2 26-week cycles. Oh, we're going to get information on the contract. I was wondering about this. All right, so each year, so 3 years, each year was 2 26-week cycles. For other people, I know that they have 13-week cycles, so it's like more than that, but that's fine. So there's a declaration of Lisa Gagliardi. While the contract provided minimum compensation per cycle, a guarantee, the 3-year term was not assured. Rather, ABC could cancel the contract at the end of any cycle. I was wondering about that. It gave Rademacher 6 weeks prior to written notice. And it also required Rademacher to comply with all applicable ABC policies, of which the vaccine policy was one of them. So basically, every 26 weeks, they could yeet his ass and it would be fine. So there you go. He picked up taping cycles in September 2019, March 2020, December 2020, and then 2021. By July 2021, Chris Van Etten, the co-head writer, was preparing to lay out long-term story plans. Sir, what long-term story plan? You know what? That's not the moment for this. It's not the moment for this, but I am curious. You're telling me you lay out 6 months of storyline, and you laid out 6 months of storyline in July 2020? I have questions. He identified Jax as one of several characters who might be or could possibly be written off the show. His role in the ongoing storyline was negligible, and Van Etten did not see a role for Jax going forward. And if I remember correctly, I felt the same way watching during that time period because I was kind of paying attention, and I know that the Nina storyline had really this is around the time the Nixon Fall stuff was blowing up, right? So or we're starting to wind down. So I knew that he was, Rademacher would assume that ABC would be discussing whether to pick up a cycle option weeks and months before deadline. So, with respect to his job duties, Rademacher said he cannot act with a mask on, and that performing often requires he get very close to other actors, including children under 12 and those under the age of 65. Indeed, because the storylines in general, including those related to Jax, often focus on personal romantic relationships, implementing increased safety protocols would require the altering creative direction or other artistic aspects. So agreeing that characters are the core of the show, masked characters were not written into the story, acting while masked was not a reasonable alternative. I think Grey's Anatomy did masked actors and it tanked, I'm sure. So this is all citing stuff that we don't have access to. I would love to have access to this stuff, but again, your girl doesn't make much money. Let's see. So on October 11th, 5 weeks after he received notice of the vaccine policy, he submitted a written exemption request. Notably, Rademacher conceded that the only religious exemption request he conceded that the religious exemption request was the only accommodation he sought for ABC. Specifically, he admits that he did not ever file for a medical accommodation or any other accommodation based on alleged disability, which would seem to, we didn't read about it in his initial, but he apparently amended it to add medical and disability discrimination. But if he never asked for it, they can't, they're obviously not in trouble for it. All right. So here's where I'm really interested in how ABC works this. So the reasons to doubt the sincerity of Rademacher's religious exemption request begin here. While Rademacher acknowledges that he had an obligation to be accurate and truthful in the information that he was supplying to ABC, his testimony confirms he ignored that obligation. Interesting. When pressed at deposition, oh my God, I want to read the deposition. Rademacher admitted that the statements in his written request were either irrelevant or made really no difference to his supposed religious beliefs. Eventually, Rademacher conceded he simply put together what he thought would be needed for a religious exemption. That's interesting. After submitting his request, he resisted the interactive process to evaluate it. Upon receiving his request, ABC asked if they were available to discuss tomorrow. Rademacher refused to meet, stating, if you have any questions regarding my religious exemption, please forward me questions in writing so I may answer them to the best of my ability. Aaron Nguyen, who was in charge of his request, conveyed that the accommodation review. There's a footnote. Hold on. So what's this footnote for? Yeah, right here. So critically, Rademacher conceded he wanted questions in writing because he felt he couldn't adequately explain his religious beliefs orally, but because he thought this would be a better process, so I asked it to do this way. Interesting. All right. So he conveyed that the accommodation request revolves an interactive process and dialogue to a way for two-way exchange of information and questions. We're not able to engage in a truly interactive conversation via email. And that's true. I think a lot of us sometimes feel that we go back and forth in email, but you really can't. It's hard to really follow up because it's just a different, thing. Despite this, days later, Rademacher requested his refusal, stating that even asking questions to test the sincerity of my belief violates my rights and constitutions as an invasion of privacy. All right. He doubled down, telling Nguyen that I believe the mere act of questioning sincerity of my religious beliefs violates my rights. If you were insisting on having a two-way conversation, I'd like it to occur in person and with my attorney present. Okay. Ultimately, the 2-week email saga ended with Rademacher agreeing to live telephonic discussion, which finally occurred on October 26, 2021. The conversation was documented in notes contemporaneously. The notes, which Rademacher repeatedly conceded are complete and accurate, okay, made clear he failed to provide sufficient evidence of a bona fide religious belief. Indeed, he did little more than reiterate his written request. For example, we're getting a little bit upset. Can you please explain your objection to the COVID-19 vaccine? It is pretty much as I stated in my first paragraph. So, therefore, Rademacher stonewalled all of her attempts to follow up. Although space considerations preclude us from listing all examples, his stonewalling included in response to whether Rademacher was a following of a religion or a spiritual community. He says, you do not have, basically he was Fifth Amending his way all the way through this. You do not have the right. It's religious discrimination to ask me about religious beliefs. Sir, you're asking for religious exemption. Kind of feel like, yeah. Interesting. When Nguyen asked Rademacher to explain whether his beliefs are based on broader teaching, system of beliefs, or versus only an objection to vaccines, questioning, he Fifth Amendmented himself here. I think that's kind of interesting because I do think that if this was a sincerely held belief, you could expound it on a little bit, but like plenty of people follow religions and don't actually know what the fuck they're talking about. Case in point, anybody. So here are some other footnotes. So Nguyen further explained this common sense approach in his exposition. We have found it is most effective to have verbal conversations with people to allow for a real-time back and forth, and also better enables us to conclude that the person with whom you are acting is in fact the person who made the request and not someone else. Like it wasn't made through writing by like, It also allows for them to be able to ask questions of us in real time, so maybe we could understand, as explained later, his insistence that ABC has no right to test the sincerity is wrong as a matter of law, and his refusal to budge from that incorrect position during the accommodation is just, okay. So I'm interested, so they're going to explain that later why they have no right to test the sincerity. Because that's where I'm unaware of anything in the law that allows that, but apparently it does. And so that's just a footnote, so let's go back up here. So Rademacher admitted in his deposition that he withheld critical information relating to his religious beliefs from ABC. Here's the question and answer. So you did hold back some information. Yes, I believe that it was a violation of my civil rights. Therefore, you didn't answer them. Okay. So he didn't provide a lot of information to ABC in the interactive policy. With limited information, he did reveal that his opposition to the vaccine was rooted in secular, philosophical, moral beliefs. And he actually expressly disclaimed any notion his beliefs were religious. Has this lifestyle informed any of your other choices, re medical care interventions? And he says his beliefs do not need to be based on religion or believe in God, but only his conscience. Yeah, that, sir, did you say that one out loud? Because that should be an inside thought if you're looking for them. Your beliefs absolutely do need to be based on, religion. Conscience would be philosophical and morality. Ooh, okay. All right. Okay. To summarize succinctly, at no point did Rademacher mention his beliefs are based on, related to, or even loosely connected to any religious text or teaching. The only support Rademacher cited for his position, aside from his own conscience or personal moral code, was case law. And that's where they're going to get him, because I just think it's such a boggy area. Like, what is religion except it's a belief in a morality system? I think it's interesting. It's so weird. Like, I think this is a dumb argument. I think, in the sense that, I think this is it's just interesting to see how where we draw the line between religious belief and morality when they're supposed to be related. It's fine. We're moving on. It's not the kind of. Finally, Rademacher's statements to Nguyen revealed that his opposition to the COVID-19 vaccines was rooted in health or efficacy concerns, not religion. He said the allegedly religious practice he bases his life on is reducing toxicity as much as possible. That is a health philosophy, not a religion. That is true. When he was asked, what do you think would happen if you were to get vaccinated? He only had concerns for his earthly body as opposed to his soul. That's the point. It has side effects and people have died from it. And it's all secular. I mean, they make excellent sense here. And it's probably why Steve Burton I'm going to imagine Steve Burton was probably along the same lines. And so he probably, I don't know. Luckily for us, Steve Burton went away quietly into that good night, and he kept his mouth zipped, and that there's a good chance that Jason gets to come back one day, and he probably will. But Jackson, peace. You have burned the bridges, my good friend. But Steve Burton, he just sat there, ate his food, and went on his merry way. I appreciate that, because if you're going to be an idiot, at least be an idiot. I don't have to look at being an idiot like this is. I used to like Jax. This is pissing me off. And here's some more footnotes. I love that they're quoting so much from the actual discussion to show that this is such a bullshit thing. His interactive discussion also he failed to hold his clean beliefs with any meaningful conviction. He was equivocal in nearly every description of his supposed religious practices. He labels them as moral beliefs. So we did that here. This is where basically they're pulling out. All right. They try to avoid Western medicine. All right. So if this is a fundamental tenet of Rademacher's religion, he practices it only sporadically. At his deposition, he says he tries to limit ingesting anything that's made in the lab. To avoid bad breath, he uses breath mint, which contains lab chemical stuff. He takes ibuprofen for headaches. And he got a vasectomy. So, and he handwrote the name of his pharmacy. So, like, he definitely takes medicine. So it's really just the vaccine. So he does put shit into his body that's not natural. Yeah, I wonder why they didn't think it was a religious exemption worthy. I wonder. Woo! So based on that, they just said they yeeted it. They yeeted his request. We do not believe a sincerely held religious belief, practice, or observance. So I think this is just more of that. He refused to permit any meaningful inquiry about ABC into matters related to his things. He proceeded to summarize his religious views as taking care of these physical bodies as a responsibility. Okay, so this is more of the same. So his mindset seems to be more of the product of secular health philosophy rather than religious orientation. And like, okay, so here's the thing: if that's where the law falls, and that's the difference, then yeah, he obviously doesn't have a religious belief. What I find interesting is that we are drawing a line between morality, like our moral philosophies, and religion. Like, the fuck? Why? Why does this? Why? Does anybody else kind of mind boggle by all that? All right. He testifies that his religion is not comprehensive in nature, but focused instead on the issue of not altering, one's immune system. Okay. He says his religion lacks important writings such as creeds, tenets, precepts, parables, commandments, prayers, and scriptures, gathering places such as churches, keepers of knowledge such as clergy, ceremonies and rituals that are imbued with transcendent significance, structural organization of hierarchy of leader, and propagation of beliefs. So there's no missionaries proselytizing. All right, so I guess we have like a definition. I mean, we do have definitions of religion. I just think it's interesting. In fact, the only religious accoutrement, which is French, except for vague references to God, are restrictions on the injection of certain toxic substances, but only when he sees fit. Okay. So he testified that no one else can join his religion. Oh, please tell me he didn't actually say this. Oh my God. I'm going to need a minute. Rademacher further testified that nobody can join his religion which has no name. There's no religion to join. Okay. Apologies. Deepest apologies. Sorry, I didn't listen. I think that if you're going to go to an interview where you're trying like hell to keep your job, but you don't want to get the jab, right? And you're saying, please don't make me get the jab because religion. And then they're like, but how can people join your religion? And there's no religion to join. And I'm just, whether you believe in any of that or not, like whether you are an anti-vaxxer, I just think that that's dumb. That's like, this is the kind of shit that makes it on the dumbest criminals countdowns. You know what I'm saying? How do I join your religion? The things for which you want. Anyway, I'm sorry. I was not expecting that, guys. I was not expecting that. All right. Finally, Rademacher's testimony shows that his religion simply encourages personal inquiry, but not to provide answers to ultimate questions. This is the best thing I've ever read in my life. Rademacher has no opinion on what happens after death because I've never died. Woo! Woo! I love it. Okay, you know what? Woo! Indeed, Rademacher beliefs originate exclusively from something he has always felt in his heart, which he summarizes as there is going to be judgment day, so he has to be a good person. Okay. And because Rademacher believes that a personal relationship with God is enough, it appears that any person can subscribe to Rademacher's beliefs, regardless of whether they follow another faith, and can explore their own ultimate questions. His God does not demand a religion. He tried to bolster the bona fide nature of his claimed religious beliefs by citing to a book called The Revelations of Romola. However, he was forced to admit that prior to filing his lawsuit, the last time he read this book was as a teenager, some 30 years ago. Indeed, at the time of his request, he did not even possess a copy of the text. And he admitted it was a book that he purchased on Amazon only weeks before his deposition, presumably for the purposes of producing something in Discovery. Even momentarily assuming Ramallah, please correct me if anybody knows, somehow supports a contention that Rademacher subscribes to a bona fide religion. It does not. And it is undisputed. Oh, and so he's also, this is just more, no text, email, social media discussing what religion, it is undisputed that Rademacher has never provided anything about Ramallah to ABC during the so he never brought it up. So we cannot dispute that ABC did not have access to this information. Went to there it is. All right. So his opposition is grounded in his objections to vaccine mandates, which, by the way, they made fucking clear in their complaint. They didn't want the mandate. It is not based on concerns of his privacy. Rademacher volunteered to members of the cast and crew that he was unvaccinated. There you go. I'm going to try and get through this a little faster. I'm sorry, I got really stuck on that one line, which I felt was beautiful. He told his social media followers on August 25th, I kind of remember this one, mandating any vaccine is wrong, especially one that doesn't help the spread, but it's nothing short of crazy talk. If you want to take the vaccine, take it. Just know you're doing it for yourself, not to say anyone. You're not a hero. I remember that. I promise to stand with you to fight for medical freedom. Hashtag medical freedom. No mandates. He issued warnings about vaccine injury, promising to fight for medical freedom. He did other public statements to confirm the point. He publicized his campaign in Tucker Carlson. This lawsuit is not about the show. It's about our human rights and corporate mandates. No mentions of religion. If people want to see the real me, then I invite you to watch the interview with Tucker. So there's a video of Carlson in the transcript. The real Rademacher fails to ever mention or refer to a religion. Rather, the fact that they are, okay, the lawyer for this, I now stand you. The real Rademacher fails to ever mention or refer to religion. Rather, the real Rademacher says, the way I look at this with this COVID vaccine is you would have a rational argument that the vaccine did a good job at studying the spread, that you would have mandated it work. Evidently, the real Rademacher would not oppose ABC's vaccine policy if he believed the COVID-19 vaccines were effective. Yep, there it is. Guys, when I first did this on Sunday, I said I was like 60-40 if ABC was going to get eat it. I had not read this. It's I'm not saying, I don't know. I feel like it's more 70-30, and that's just because I don't really know enough. But it definitely feels like some of this is getting yeeted. I feel like May 1st is not a trial date we're looking at. But I could be wrong. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Does it feel like maybe, listen, this is well written. So let's see. His latest amendment complaint adds claims for political retaliation. But his deposition testimony makes clear that these political claims are based on nothing more than speculation and flimsy beliefs and assumptions. When asked, he could not identify the specific subject of the political activity that ABC allegedly took issue with, let alone the activity itself. Critically, the undisputed evidence is that Aaron Nguyen alone who made the decision. Rademacher never disclosed his political beliefs, so that had nothing to do with it. And she had no knowledge whatsoever about his social media posts. Right, so that makes sense. All right, so here's where the argument is. So his cause for action of privacy, this is where they start citing case law. So why doesn't his mandate violate his privacy? Let's just say. So to prevail on this claim, he must demonstrate 1, a legally protected privacy interest, 2, a reasonable expectation of privacy in the circumstances, and 3, conduct by a defendant constituting a serious invasion of privacy. So he's got 3 prongs. All right, so the burden is a defendant may defeat a state constitutional privacy claim by either negating any of the 3 elements or showing that invasion of privacy is justified. So he has to that all ABC has to do is show that this is justified because of 1 or more countervailing entrants. And yeah, that makes sense. And so he is safeguarding health. The challenge law is refuted. So yeah, so the invasion here is justified by the countervailing interest in protecting the health and safety. So basically, we get to do this because we're protected for the greater good, basically. And that's enshrined in law, so whether you agree with it or not is kind of like a moot point. So he had no legally protected privacy interests nor any expectation of privacy that was in fact impacted by the vaccine policy. It does not force him to consent. It's a big thing. So it does not force him to consent to vaccination. It conditions his continued employment on vaccination. He can choose not to be vaccinated and work elsewhere. It's basically not compulsory because I'm not holding you down and making you do it. I'm saying if you don't do it, peace out, you're fired. And like, that's fair. Yeah, that makes sense. I was kind of with him on that. So he cannot demonstrate a reasonable expectation of privacy as to his vaccine status. He voluntarily and repeatedly discloses vaccination status to others. I would kill to know who on the set he talked to because that must be somewhere in all the discovery. Did not keep his status secret, and he also discussed his opposition on social media, both prior to, like everybody knew where he stood before it even happened. And like, that's not that surprising. He also consented to the disclosure of his vaccinations. So he consented to disclosure after that. So, all right, this included, so here, okay, go back, sorry. I'm just trying to go through it a little faster because it's all one more document. The other document's shorter. It is undisputed that the vaccine policy was implemented by ABC after it worked with the union to secure approval. All right. This included the right to insist on vaccination as continued employment, the right to request proof of status, and the right to confirm the name of the vaccine. All right. As a matter of law, he conferred authority to SAG to negotiate on his behalf, and he is deemed to have consented to disclosing his vaccine status. Yeah, that's how it works. Like, you may hate it, but like, that's law. A union is empowered to collect. That's where collective bargaining comes from. He had a rational basis. So ABC is a rational basis for adopting the vaccine. ABC's interest in containing the spread of COVID-19 and its workplace among the hills. California law says when the asserted interest is safeguarding health, the law or policy at issue is reviewed under the least restrictive standard, so that there is a lower standard on whether or not they can privacy intrusions. Like, it's a lower standard when it's based on public health. So here, ABC had a compelling interest to promote the health and interest in work, and to act reasonably to protect it. So an employer is entitled to and take steps to prevent its employees, and then it's and I don't think anybody really argues that that's true. You may argue whether or not you think the vaccine is but religious discrimination fails. So here it is. So Friedman versus Southern California. Here is the appellate, and it looks like it was appellate court. So here is what you need for religious discrimination. So to establish a prima facie case, which is the basic case of religious discrimination, you need 3 elements. You need to know the employee must sincerely hold the belief, the employer must be aware of that belief, and that belief conflicted with employment. All right. So once the employee states that, so like once they believe all of those things, so basically it'd be like if you were a Catholic, right? And this is kind of a big thing. If you were a Catholic working in a Catholic school and you want to have sex before marriage and live with your boyfriend, you probably signed a contract that said you wouldn't do that. And like, people get fired over that. Do I think it's right? No. But you're working for a Catholic school. Like, that's literally in the religion, right? So that's the kind of thing. Like, do I think that that's like a great thing? No. But I'm saying, like, this is the law we got, right? So basically, he had the burden first to prove that he was that this was a religious belief and it was firmly held, and that, like, he had to prove that. And once he proved that, then the burden shifts to the employer to say that, like, to negotiate. But like, he failed on a couple of things. So first, ABC requires anyone applying for a religious accommodation to provide it with basic information about his or her religious belief. As a threshold matter, because there is no factual dispute that he participated in an interactive process, by asserting that ABC had no right, his religious discrimination claim fails as a matter of law. There is not a single case that holds that an employer cannot properly inquire into the sincerity or religious nature of an employee's belief. To the contrary, the law recognizes an employer's ability to inquire. So here is the case law here. Notice he never cited any case law, so that's why I think that's interesting. As a matter of common sense, an employer must be permitted some inquiry into the purported beliefs of an employee before the duty to accommodate arises. I can't accommodate you until I understand the belief, I guess. So there's that. So that's number one, is that they absolutely can ask you more information in order to make sure it's a bona fide belief. 2, even if it's not, fuck you. Basically, he does not have a bona fide religious belief, and they've talked about that a little bit. They've already this is all kinds of stuff we've already talked about. His beliefs are not religious in nature. In California, law is clear. Something more than a strongly held view of right and wrong is necessary for the law to recognize beliefs of the religion. So here we have. So first, a religion addresses fundamental and ultimate questions having to do with deep and imponderable matters. Second, a religion is comprehensive in nature. It consists of a belief system as opposed to an isolated teaching. Third, a religion can often be recognized by the presence of certain formal and external signs. Again, I do think we're in boggy territory. I don't know that the law. What is a religion? How does it even get? I just think I think it's an interesting legal question. I don't think it applies because I don't think this is a religious belief. But I do think it's very interesting that we get to even have this conversation what weighs on. Not surprisingly, the cases rejecting similar beliefs regarding vaccine. Okay, so there are tons of cases that says vaccines are not religious. It's just there are so many that they're just going on and on and on. All right. Even the deeply held beliefs that it is immoral and unethical for humans to kill and exploit animals does not qualify as a religion. Let me tell you what. If anything should qualify as a religion, it's vegans. Because, man, they follow that shit like a religion. So he held those beliefs with the strength of traditional religious views and religious according life. So, listen, if a vegan doesn't have religious protection, I'm going to tell you they're probably not going to go with this. I'm going to 75-25. I think this gets yeeted next week. I think we're going for a summary judgment. I think this is getting yeeted. I'm not. There's a lot of case law here. It's interesting. Let's see what else we got. All right, so this is just all. I was just interested in the law. All right. So nonetheless, as an actor working closely with others, ABC could not accommodate the exemption request. Let's see. So ABC considered and relied on significant evidence in enacting the vaccine policy, including evidence that unvaccinated employees were much less likely. Okay. Numerous courts have therefore reached the common sense result that permitting unvaccinated employees to work in people-facing roles is an undue burden, even if mitigation measures such as that. So this explains why maybe Steve Burton was also denied, because I think they're the only two non-vaccinated people that got fired, is because that it just would put too much burden on everybody else, right? And he even says he cannot perform his acting job while social distancing or using PPE. And surveillance testing, the only other thing, is not sufficient. So basically, in sum, ABC is legally obligated to provide a safe working environment. Unvaccinated individuals in high contact roles, like Rademachers, do not work alone, and they pose a higher risk of contracting and therefore spreading COVID-19. That makes sense. Although I'm curious for other things. We'll talk about it in a minute because, like I said, this is not in here. So anyway. Let's see. So, okay. So C, his third cause of action for disability. They don't even he repractices religious discrimination as one for disability. There's nothing to this. In summary, disposition is proper. He admits he's not disabled. So he doesn't have a medical condition, so he can't do that. He did not timely exhaust his administrative remedies. He could not have properly pleaded. I can speak. He could not have properly pleaded a disability discrimination. This is all the reasons. So remember, he originally filed saying you violated my religious beliefs, right? My civil rights because of my religious exemption. And then he refiled with an amended complaint that added a bunch of crap. And now they are one by one taking apart his crap, basically saying that none of these things are true. Rademacher did not timely exhaust his administrative remedies because he didn't say anything about, he didn't list that disability as right? The vaccine policy cannot transform Rademacher's unvaccinated status into a disability. So he argued, apparently, that ABC's policy prevented him from working, therefore transforming his unvaccinated status into a disability. This is sophistry. Such a circular theory would turn the FEHA on its head and make it impossible for employers to implement any policies to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And then there's a bunch of case law that says, nah. Furthermore, the code's ensuing description of limits of major life activity further confirms that this does not, so basically not being vaccinated does not qualify as a disability. I can't believe we have to say that out loud. You are not disabled because you're unvaccinated, you dumbass. And then here's the one that I'm most interested in because I think it's the one that before he became known for this, he was known as an asshole transphobe. So there's that. In the SAC, the amended complaint. So second amendment complaint, that's why it's called SAC in the SAC. Rademacher, whatever, pivoted to an alternative challenge to his termination that is wholly at odds with the religious discrimination claim. Now he belatedly alleges he was wrongfully terminated for expressing political and social views. All right. There are many grounds for summary judgment. Wait. Oh, so he doesn't have any evidentiary support. They're going to explain it here. I got confused by how it was worded. So number one, we never said you can't be politically active, which is true. I mean, otherwise he would have fired a lot, sure. So to prevail under this particular thing, he'd have to show that the employer had a rule, regulation, or policy forbidding this. All right. Two, there is no evidence ABC's decision regarding his final cycle was pretextual. So basically, he was going into his last 26 weeks, and he cannot demonstrate that the termination was based on political retaliation. And the evidence shows that he was denied based on Erin Nguyen, and Erin Nguyen would never have known anything about that unless she was a bit like. And I just find it like unlikely that she was like. You have to be on social media, and you have to be not only on social media but in the GH circle of social media. Let's see. So the alleged determination. So I'm just trying to like parse this so we can get this through a little faster. All right. So his claim that they decided to terminate the deal because of his social political views. Even if they did, they're protected by the First Amendment. Interesting. Even assuming his allegations had any factual support and were true, this alleged decision to terminate for his political beliefs is a protected casting decision. Just as a state is not free to tell a newspaper in advance of what it can and cannot print, the government cannot tell an employer who it must hire or retain if that action is bound to affect the expressive content of the employer's work. So yeah, you being an asshole, transphobe, anti-vaxxer, not always a great look. All right. Accordingly, casting type decisions are protected by the First Amendment. Yeah, you can't. Very, very hard to make that decision. All right, so we're almost done. Derivative claims failed. So basically, you're out of gas. You suck. Done. Whew. That one was a fun read. I'm not gonna lie. That was fun. There was a lot of shade. There's a lot of shade throwing. And I think my favorite part, I'm gonna clip out because I just think it's funny. So I might clip it. We got one more, and this is the one I broke down a little bit on Sunday. And most of it's a repeat. So we're probably gonna like zoom through to the I will, if you are interested, I will like have it somewhere, I guess. I'm trying to find the zoom button on here because this is different. There it is. Whoop. Okay. So hopefully you guys can all see this still well. Let me double check in here, make sure I'm not missing anything in the back. All right. No, I gotta fix this a little bit because I wish I could. Yeah, that should do it, right? Yeah, it does it. Okay. All right. So that was ABC's like, hey, on March 30th, please yeet this because this is bullshit. And this is Ingo replying saying, hey, sir, you can't yeet this for this reasons. Please keep us in. All right. So facts and procedural history, argument. All right. And here there, hey, look, we got case law, guys. Case law has entered the building. I'm interested now. Okay. So he opposes for this reason. All right. So in January, they stopped enforcing the mandatory COVID-19 vaccine, and it has not formed, Disney has not formally rescinded the policy, but is unlikely to enforce it again. All right. So it's not enforcing. It used the vaccine to get rid of many employees, including people who had won at the fire. That group included Ingo. Interesting. The show's producers did not like his comments about Donald Trump and restrictive COVID policies, so that's where he's bringing it. He's obviously. Oh my God, I missed this the first time. I think there was a problem though. Ingo was one of the most popular actors on General Hospital. Man, sir, I missed this. I said that he did not argue this. It turns out I just missed this one line. He was under contract until June 2022. I do believe that that's 26 weeks. I think that's hysterical. And they had previously discussed extending his deal. Criticism led to the creation of hashtag Fire Ingo. I'm pretty sure that I hashtag Fire the Dingo. I thought our hashtag was a little meaner, but all right. And it was trending around the time ABC decided to axe him. Okay, let me get this straight. You were one of the most popular actors on General Hospital, but at the same time, something trended so hard, hashtag Fire Ingo, that you got fired. How does that trend so hard if you're so popular? Make it make sense. Also, We can get anything trending on Twitter. It doesn't take much, to be quite honest. When Franco was unceremoniously shot in the fucking heart and bled to death, we got the Franco is over party. We got the Franco related stuff trending so hard that they thought it was about General Francisco Franco, or the guy from Spain who died in the 70s. And they're like, hey, we don't know why this is trending. And like, it's because of an imaginary soap character. You can get anything to trend on social media. Holy crap. Anyway, not important. Sorry. He sought an accommodation. ABC had duties, as we've all talked to this. We are still conducting discovery about topics central to the dispute. Court should let us complete the discovery, even from the evidence gathered so far. Okay. So, appendix of evidence. I do not have this. Okay. This is like the number one thing I would kill to have. And if we look, appendix of evidence, I believe, is, I don't think they've actually put that in. I don't know which one that is, but I would kill to have that. Because that's where the unredacted stuff probably is. Okay. All right. So after a hiatus, he returns on a long-term contract. He originated the role. He's the only one to play it. Good for you. He left GH. He was acting. He missed out to Frank Valentini. See, this is how I knew Valentini was in the... Sir, do you see what happens when you just hire anybody off the streets? I know Ingo's not anybody off the streets, but I'm saying I like to blame Frank for a lot. He encouraged Ingo to come back to GH, but he insisted he get a long-term deal with a minimum of shows per week. He's planned to spend the rest of his career playing Jax. I plan to spend the rest of my career not teaching the French. We're going to get what we, He agreed. They offered him a 3-term contract, the longest term. ABC offered Ingo a 3-year contract, the longest term offered to any GH star, with a guarantee of 2 shows per week, and the pay increased from $290 $2,900 per episode to $3,100 and $3,300 in the year. Someone do the math on that. I think we finally find out how much people make. So yeah, he got a basic contract and I'm not surprised they gave him a 3-year contract coming back. I'm not going to tell you, listen, I'm not going to tell you that Jax was not a popular character. No, he is, but he's never been popular on his own. To the extent I can remember wanting Jax back because I really love Jax and Carly. I can remember really enjoying Jax back when he was with Brenda after Sonny left her at the altar. I really enjoyed a lot of that next year before Brenda died in 1998. That whole 97 to 98, Brenda and Jax friendship, where he was really there for her and helped her really reclaim herself and rebuild. I really liked that Jax. And then I liked Jax in 98, 99 until he left in 2000. I loved Jax and Chloe. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I didn't like Jax. I personally did. But I'm okay. I think his heyday on the show really was that first run. I think when he came back, he was popular with Jax and Sky, but they broke up Jax and Sky for Brenda, and I don't think Jax ever really kind of regained his role on the show. To the extent that he was still popular, it was with Carly, because he was with Courtney for 5 minutes and then they killed her off. So I'm not gonna tell you Jax wasn't well loved. I just don't think, he was popular now. His really height of his popularity is 15 years ago. Actually more it's 25 years ago. He was most popular when he first came on. So so he starts in February 2019. Valentini was excited to have Ingo back and said he performed well. I think he did. I think we were all happy to have him back initially. I think we've always loved the Sonny and Jax rivalry when it's written correctly. And he regularly worked over his guarantee. Good for him. Pandemic happened. Ingo complied with all the rules. He felt he was doing some of his best work during 2020. I think your best work was Jax with Brenda's death in 98. So I think you just calm your roll there. They extended. So I remember I broke this out. So on September 29, 2020, they discussed extending Ingo's contract for at least another year. He agreed, but Ingo's not getting a big raise. So that's something. That means he might be being received well. They might be happy with them, but he doesn't have any leverage to negotiate anything better. And I think if you did the math on 2 episodes per week at $3,000, I'm not saying it's nothing. I'm saying, 2020 presidential election, a campaign that saw an unprecedented amount of commentary, especially on social media. Ingo voted for Donald Trump and thought he had done a good job. He said so on most social media. That caused a stir in Hollywood. I would like some proof, sir, that it would. No. nobody in Hollywood cared. I'm gonna tell you, on social media we thought it was funny. By early 2021, with Trump suggesting he might not leave office, the cancel culture had reached a feverish pitch. Here comes, so you can, like, again, the opinionated writing is here, right? And like, I'm okay with opinionated writing. I just think it's always interesting to point it out. So, for example, on January 8th, 2021, an Instagram user posted some of Ingo's Trump-related social media called Ingo a nut who supports violence, racism, and sedition. I won't watch as long as Nazi Jacks. Hashtag Ingo Rademacher is still in the show. I remember that. And they linked the post, so they tagged Trank. I remember reading stuff like that. And then they were saying, hey, fire him. And like, yeah, viewers get to say that. They get to say that, like, we don't want to separate the art from the artist. Now, plenty of people do that. I have chosen to do that. I think Steve Burton is an idiot. Sorry. I think that you're an idiot. And I get to think that because I don't matter, right? I'm not in your life. I'm not married to you. Nobody is at this point. Good luck with that, sir. I'm not married to you, right? Like, I don't give a shit. You're not in my life. You're a guy on a television show. You're one of my favorite characters on the television show. I need you to stop being an idiot so Jason can come back and save Elizabeth, but not under these writers. Anyway, it's not important. But like, I've separated the art because, like, he's an idiot quietly, right? The first anybody heard of this nonsense was when he got fired. Like, that was it. I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything else about Steve Burton's personal beliefs, and I'm good with that. I don't need to know anything about your personal beliefs. Please don't tell me shit. I don't want to know. Everybody knew Ingo was an asshole. Because I remember this next part. Valentini knew about Ingo's commentary. In fact, he had a GH employee tracking the comments. Interesting. I'd love to see that. And in February 2021, GH actress Nancy Lee Grant complained to Valentini about a social media post made by Ingo and GH star Maurice, not spelled correctly, that some perceived to be an attack on Miss Grant. Idiot. It was an attack because Maurice came out and apologized. So, though the incident blew over, Miss Grant sent Valentini some of politicals. I would sell my children. I believe this was probably the word support. This is if anybody doesn't remember this, basically, they were having a conversation. They were doing a live. There was some sort of video, and they were, I think, one of them, I can't remember now which one was talking about how they had to go get ready for a scene, to film a scene, and then they go and pan to the screen, which I guess was showing the in studio stuff, and it was Nancy as Alexis, and like and the other one's like, oh, sorry, and like they just made like some like really shitty remarks, and like, yeah, I think it's shitty, and it makes you think, wow, what's it like working on that set? Like, I'm like, you know, you're already an asshole and you're an idiot, but now you're also a sexist asshole idiot. And like, there's a lot going on here, and then they're not going to talk about it in here. But he also made transphobic remarks, and like, so did Nancy Lee Graham also, but she's somebody else who's social media that drives me nuts. Anyway. Around this time, his shooting schedule suddenly declined, and for the first time, he was working under his guarantee. They were paying him not to work. So basically, he got guaranteed those 2 episodes a week, and if he wasn't on 2 episodes a week, he was still paid. I don't remember what his storyline was by then, but I'm pretty sure this is around the time, if I recall correctly. So I remember this was around the time the Nixon Falls stuff was starting to heat up, because Sonny was believed dead in that December. And by February, he was in Nixon Falls. So I imagine this was around the time they were starting to wind that down. So like, that kind of makes sense. So giving Trump the vaccine credit, this is all going into vaccine stuff, which we already talked about in great detail. I mean, at first Disney decided not to require it. That was consistent. And this is redacted. I don't know what this is. I don't know why stuff is getting redacted. That's kind of interesting. I wonder if it's because the appendix of evidence is not public. If it is, like I said, I couldn't tell you which one it is. It might be this separate statement. It might be this. I don't know. I don't know what. Without getting this stuff, I don't know what any of it is necessarily. I'd have to look more into it. But that view suddenly changed. So basically, initially Disney was like, nah, and then they were like, okay. And what changes is the Delta variant. ABC says that's what changes. ABC Council produced just 4 documents about that meeting. We just got those last week. ABC decides to recast Jax, and then because of the police. So basically, Jax decides that he thinks that he is going to be recasted based on the politics. But then instead of doing that, they used the vaccine to get rid of him. And I think that that's actually probably not true at all. I just don't think that they were ever going to recast Jax. I think there's no point. I don't think he's essential. Basically, during their summer meeting, when they discussed the contract was set to expire, they contemplate it. Story ideas. So there's that. And then August 21st, here is the anti-vaccine passport rally he went to. Newsy, who is the producer, he's like ready for a recast. And Valentini's like, yup, probably the smartest thing that Valentini's ever said. I stand by that. This was not the only time the JH producers mocked Ingo's opposition to mandatory vaccination policies. It sparked controversy during the summer and the fall. He also texted, so Nancy also was like, yo, Frank, look at this dingo. And he responds, I see the dingo. And then another show producer, who they don't name, responds to saying, whatever. And then more redacted shit. I want to know what's been redacted. Somebody please tell me what's been redacted. I must know. Listen, I don't like, please, I'll beg. Fire Ingo happened again. Valentini was planning to drop GH after his contract expired in June 2022. And then Newsy suggested they terminate early. Valentini contemplated that, but he something. And Valentini thought they had an out based on the mandatory vaccine policy. Interesting. So Valentini thought they had an out. So basically the idea was like they were going to get rid of him after his contract expired. But before that happens, Valentini's like, we have this mandatory why fire Ingo? We can just get rid of him on this. But yes, why not? If you were already saying like, listen, we're going to cut this dill hole after June because it's not worth it, which by the way, asshole, they're allowed to do. Sorry, I have now firmly decided I am on ABC's side, and you know how I feel about being on Frank Valentini's side. It feels uncomfortable. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't. But there was a problem. As an employer, ABC had a duty to accommodate people who have religious beliefs. She had no reason to doubt the sincerity of Ingo's objection to a vaccination, except for the part where she asked, how do people join your religion? He's like, there is no religion. And I'm like, she granted multiple requests for religious accommodations. Okay. I'd be more interested in seeing that, but she denied Ingo's accommodation request. They also got denied for Steve Burton. So Steve Burton, like I said, was also under the same thing. He also got denied for religious accommodation, and it makes you wonder. I wonder if Ingo wasn't such a fucking asshole that they wanted to get rid of, if maybe Steve could have negotiated something. Just makes you wonder. Because that man went into the night quietly, and I appreciate that. You're an idiot, but you're a respectful idiot. Moron. He did not get the shot by the deadline, therefore he got terminated. And then the only reason they gave for terminating the agreement for failure to comply. That's the only thing they need to do. He would have made another $171,000 during that time. Whatever. He files this case. This is my favorite line in this one. ABC executives laughed at it. I must know. Please, somebody find with this. I want the opposition. I want the appendix. Okay, the appendix is not attached, and I want this so bad. This is specific contained in the litigation itself. Yes, they laughed at it. They thought it was fucking funny. Things changed last summer when ABC produced documents that GH producers decided to drop Ingo from the show even before. Yes, they were probably anticipating that they were not going to renew his contract. They're allowed to do that. The case also took a turn when ABC turned over documents that showed it initially decided not the mandate. They changed their minds. ABC's counsel has tried to jam the case through summary judgment and trial. What I think is interesting here, it's almost like they're like, we changed it overnight because does this man think that Disney, the evil empire, it used to be the Yankees, but it's a little bit the Disney now, did this just so they could fire this man? They could have just paid him not to work. Disney's got the money. If Disney, it would have been cheaper. Pay the man not to work. Legal standard, defendant moving for summary judgment must make a prima facie case if there are no triable issues of fact. All right. So in order for ABC to win on its yeet this asshole out of the building, which is next Wednesday, in order for that to work, basically you have to show that there is no issues that could, like, basically there's no way this asshole could win in court. This is especially true when the defendant seeks a summary judgment before the plaintiff has had a fair chance to make complete discovery. Like, we're not done discovering things. Okay, so ABC should be denied because construing the evidence in the light most favorable to him, which is how you do it. What you're doing is like, if everything that Ingo says is true, could he win? A reasonable jury could decide his case for Ingo. Here, okay. Factual disputes permeate the constitutional privacy claim. He says it cannot be violated. Ingo is challenging Disney's void ab metis. Why do we still use Latin? Because it violated his right to privacy. This claim cannot be adjudicated now. To prove the claim, he must show he had three things: legally protected privacy interests, and he produced. So he thinks he's met those elements. Sure. His right to bodily autonomy. I think that Disney has actually met that by saying, I do wonder, like, that might be, like, that's where I'm like, I think this is 75-25. I think there's a 25% chance that they let this go because for privacy. But I also see that there's quite a lot of case law against it. So we'll see. Disney typically views its employees' health as private matters. COVID-19 was different. As of July 7th of 2021, they still treated COVID vaccine as a whatever. But then the policy would change, and that he, not Richardson, decided to change it. He thinks it was arbitrary and capricious. Okay, so they're really arguing with, like, okay. I think it's interesting. Like, it doesn't, so I guess what he's trying to say is that you shouldn't have done this overnight the way you did because A, you clearly didn't believe in it, but now you're doing it, so you must have done it for a reason. And it's just like, so they can do that. Like, I don't think that gets you anywhere. I don't think this is the win he thinks it is. Like, the idea, like, he's spending a lot of time and a lot of pages on this idea that Disney changed its mind overnight. But, like, I'm not aware of any reason they're not allowed to, and they don't need to explain why they changed their vaccine policy. They changed it, and then they went through the process to make sure that it could be applicable to who it needed to be applicable, and then they had a process. Like, it doesn't. I just don't know if that's the I just don't think that that's the win. State privacy differs from federal law. We talked about privacy. I'm not. Yeah, so a summary judgment is a drastic measure which deprives the losing party of the trial and merits. Okay, the federal cases ABC cited have no bearing on this analysis. In fact, the only federal case that could have some bearing is that Supreme Court decision that voided the Biden's vaccine policy for large employers because of the spread of the disease is a health issue, not a workplace risk that employers and workplace regulators have power over. Interesting. So they want to know why Disney changed their minds, and I guess they're looking. I just don't know that they have a right to it. I don't know. I'm interested in why they think they have a right. They keep talking about it as if because it's such an invasion of privacy, but I don't know. I think it's interesting. There's no merit that SAG waived his right. Union did not object. He never authorized them to waive the right. Yes, you did. That's how it works. That SAG gets to bargain for you, negotiate. ABC Ingo is entitled to a judgment. Given her test, so this is interesting. So given Ms. Nguyen's testimony, she had no reason to doubt the sincerity of Ingo's belief, but made no effort to accommodate them. She does doubt your sincerity of beliefs. That's why she denied it. So, like, look, they're not even quoting the transcript. Like, that was something that was really interesting in the last document, is that all ABC did was quote the transcript, right? And then here they were very clear on why this lady, Ms. Nguyen, thought that his ideas were bullshit. And we had a whole 5 minutes where I laughed because she was right. Because it just bears repeating. She asked him, like, hey, okay, so how can people join your religion? And he tells her, there's no religion to join. Then how are you asking for a religious exemption? Like, I actually feel like she's got a lot of reasons. It just, I don't understand this entire situation here. ABC's brief shows no reason to do, no way. It accuses Ingo of withholding information from ABC about his religious beliefs, disregarding the rules that courts will generally not question. It is presumed as a matter of law. They say that they are misconstruing Friedman. He decided not to take the mumps vaccine because it was grown in chicken embryos. And he believes in a vegan lifestyle, but he did not argue that his veganism derives from a power or being from faith. Okay. He has said that this is not just a personal view, it's my interpretation of God's will. ABC enjoys mocking Ingo's religious beliefs. They did. Listen, they absolutely did. We did a little bit here too. I definitely enjoyed it. I laughed a lot. They refused to give religious accommodations to people who did do those things, including set designers Tim Wall, and makeup artist Veronica Hernandez. Once again, I think it's very interesting that the name Steve Burton is in none of these things. He is going out of his way to saying that other people got fired because of this, right? ABC refused to give religious accommodations to people who did do these things as organized religion and church services. And he cites 3 people, but he never talks about, hey, this other really popular guy got fired too. I just think that's interesting. My wondering is that he reaches out to Steve and says, hey, let's get them. And Steve's like, no, absolutely not. And I want to believe that. I need to believe that. And I think it's interesting. I think that if you've got one guy who's going to sue, why wouldn't you get the other guy to sue, right? I find it hard to believe that Steve Burton wasn't reached out to do this, but, you know, that's just my wanting to believe that he's not a complete moron. So Ingo didn't have to do those things either. The freedom to worship, as one believes, is a basic human right. California's law points away from a strictly theistic definition of religion. Belief in a supreme being was not required. The most important part of the analysis is whether the belief system occupies in a person's life a parallel to that of God in recognized religions, and whether it addresses ultimate concerns, thereby filling a void in the individual's life. Ingo's beliefs qualify. I want to just really remind you really quick. So his beliefs was he wants to limit the amount of toxicity he puts in his body, but he definitely took pain medication when he had a vasectomy. He takes ibuprofen, and he takes non-organic breath mints. And those are the 3 things ABC mentioned, and I just want to point them out because they're funny. And he also said, you can't join the religion. There's no religion to join. I know I keep coming back to that one, but that one's funny, guys. That one's really funny. They did not cite any contrary authority. Most of the cases it cited involved First Amendment claims, not California employment law. Okay, that's true. One case, the court emphasized that this is not to say that anti-vaccination beliefs cannot be part of a broader faith. They can. So, like I said, Christian scientists, I believe, are also against most types of medicine. I know there's other denominations that are not for it too. It's been a while. And like if Law and Order didn't make a case about it, I don't know. Most of ABC's cases were decided decades ago before the California legislature broadened the protections of religious freedom. And before the EEOC, equal something, I can't remember what that means. I used to know. Started cracking down on employers that refuse to accommodate religious objections to flu shot mandates. Why are there religious objections to flu shot mandates? I have so many questions. The court should reject ABC's effort to rely on reasonable accommodation, undue hardship defense. It must prove that it considered reasonable alternative options. Ms. Nguyen testified that she did not do that and did not ask anybody about it because, according to her, she never had to go that far because you failed on the first prong because she didn't think it was, you know. In any event, they accommodated some people, so some people did not get fired. All right. Interesting. After all, GH had been filming episodes of GH throughout the pandemic, testing frequently for COVID-19 and wearing a mask on and around the set, including during rehearsals. Rules GH maintained even after adopting the vaccine policy. He followed the rules and would continue to do those things. He did not have to act in any intimate scenes, if that mattered, because according to GH's lead writer, the writers could not find a love interest for Jax. This is kind of funny. They could have. They weren't interested in finding a love interest for you. And the way that this makes it sound is like you've now cut off that ability to write that story. So now you cannot have a love interest. So I think that that's kind of an argument. GH could come back and say, yeah, but now you've tied her hands in the kind of writing we can do for you, which further limits our ability to use your character. And it's a fucking daytime soap opera. What do I need with an asshole who can't do love scenes? Peace. Like, it's not the win you think it is, sir. That would severely limit your ability to do the job you were hired for. That would be undue hardship. A jury concluded that ABC treated the unvaccinated as having a disability and they're gonna eat it because he basically has already said I have no disability. I don't know how this. Do we really need to read this the whole way through? I don't know how his argument. So ABC's other arguments lack. So basically, remember we went over this in ABC's motion. It's like ABC was like, the man never said anything about this until his amendment complaint. This is the first time when he does his amendment complaint that we are as a perceived disability on basis of discrimination. Like that's the first time he's brought it up as a medical issue. Ingo filed that complaint on April 24th, 2022. I feel like I'm on crazy pills, but isn't that after he's fired? It's after he's fired, and it's after he files the initial complaint in December, right? That's interesting. ABC also argued that not having the best immunity cannot be a protected proceed because it does not limit a major activity. Major activity. That is the key here, and it cuts against ABC. So basically, in order to have a disability, for it to be protected, you have to be limited in a major activity. But major activities shall broadly be construed and includes physical, mental, and social activities and working. So ABC issued and ABC enforced. So Disney issued and ABC enforced this mandatory policy because Disney believed the people who do not have COVID were unable to work. No, they were unable to work safely. A jury could find that to be a perceived disability discrimination. Probably not, though. Probably not, though. So, must engage in an informal and interactive process to determine any effective accommodations. All right. ABC's real argument is that it could not afford to employ people like Ingo who did not take the government's advice and protect themselves. There we go. This is an affirmative defense that ABC must prove. I don't think so. It has a narrow scope requiring that employee face an imminent and substantial degree of. So basically, the real thing is like we can't afford to have you do this without the vaccine because we want to be able to protect our safe. We want to do the best job we can protecting our people. And goes like, yeah, but I did it for a year and a half and we were all cool. Yeah, but people got COVID on set. Like that was something else. Like Steve Burton literally got COVID right before he got fired, right? Like was it like the May? Like he got COVID that year, didn't he? So like people were still getting COVID. ABC never did that. It denied every request from an accommodation from every GH employee who sought one, consistent with Valentini's belief that the accommodation process was bullshit. All right, well that's. See, now we've circled back from Valentini to Valentini being his own worst enemy, which I think we can all agree is that Frank is usually the worst at everything. And while ABC may again argue that it could not accommodate Ingo without undue hardship, that is also an affirmative defense it must prove at trial. Yeah, I mean, he's got a point there. If you're going to tell, like, I think you do need to prove that more than just, like, in the, I think that maybe, yeah, all right. Kind of this is where the fun stuff comes in more. Like he concluded that they terminated his contract because of political commentary, violating California law. Probably not, though. I really do feel like this is going to win. All it argued is it did not fire Ingo because of its political views. That is a factual matter reserved for the jury. Yeah, I guess true. A jury could say like, yeah, you were probably going to be fired because of that. But I think that a lot of juries, a lot of people who in the entertainment like understand that like you're bringing bad press. And you're associating our show with bad press. Like, it just kind of, I don't know. His storyline started changing in February 2021 after he posted political comments. Also, after Nina and Jax were determined to be a fucking dud. That's also a thing. They had zero chemistry. Like, the first time Nina has had a romantic partner that did not suck fucking monkey balls was Sonny. They've already like started to break them up. For the first time, he started working under his guarantee. The GH head writers could not provide a good explanation for the sudden change. Only they could not find a new love interest and then ran out of story ideas for him. To be honest, the head writers are creatively bankrupt, so that's also an indictment of them. I can think of like 18 different stories for Jackson, like whatever. And then here's some more redacted stuff. And here we go. So Valentina Nuzzi, we already talked about this. So they were thinking about recasting them. A reasonable jury could conclude that the producers were not getting rid of Jax, but getting rid of Ingo and doing so in response to local commentary. Here's the thing, though. People get recast all the time for dumb reasons. I will never, ever forget. So first one I remember happening that I thought was really fucking stupid was Justice back in 1999 or 98. Yes, 98. So Joseph C. Phillips has been playing him for 4 years. Everybody loves Joseph C. Phillips. He's great. Justice is great. Everybody loves him. Then 98, for whatever reason, in the summer, they recast him with this guy, Monty. I want to say Monty Sharp, but I might be over that. And I remember, I'll never forget it because I remember thinking, the fuck does this mean? One of the art of the magazines was like, we want to go in a new direction with Justice. The fuck are you talking about? You were, what? And like, I don't know what that was about. And then they went in no direction with Justice because Justice left the show like a year later. So whatever. So I remember that happening. And then Robin Richards got replaced as Maxie back in 2002. Outcry, everybody said absolutely not. And so Robin Richards came back and she was in the role again for 3 years. So like recasts happen all the time for reasons that make no fucking sense. They wanted to age Maxie a little bit, but like, right. So evidence of GH's producers' political animus has only grown. Last month, just 5 days before the original deadline to file this brief, they turned over text messages in which GH producers, including Valentini, called Ingo a, oh man, I want this. I also am interested in the dates of those, right? ABC used COVID vaccine policy to cover up this decision. And so what if they did? They can do that. Valentine said he worried about getting sued by Ingo because they know you're a dingo hopper. Similar statements have been found. This is kind of where I think this is probably their best bet, is that I imagine that this is a reason that this would not be heated, is because I do feel like this could be triable. But I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have enough background in civil law, but I do think that like if I were just somebody paying attention to this, I would say yeah. And it's not just because I want the tea. It's not just because I would like Frank Valentini to be questioned under oath about fucking how he fucks up General Hospital on a goddamn daily basis. I would kill for that. I would fly to California to watch that man testify about how awful. This needs to stream. If this goes to trial, guys, we need to talk to Law and Crime and get some feeds into that courtroom. I need to know this. I need to see this trial. There is no merit to ABC's argument that it has a constitutional right to fire Ingo because it disagrees with political views. ABC did not. That's not what they said. They said that their casting decisions are constitutionally protected. They cannot fire a person under contract because of his political views. The labor code makes that clear. They prohibit employers from interfering with the fundamental rights of the employees in general to engage in political activity. Liability is only triggered if the employee fires an employee based on a political motive. Yeah, but here's the thing. They didn't fire him because of that. They wanted to fire him because of that. They couldn't fire him because of that. And so they waited for him to trip up in another way, or they were going to wait out his contract. They were already working under your guarantees, sir. They could have literally, you understand that they could have used you the way they used to use Elizabeth. They could have had you sit in Kelly's and say, yo, Car, what's up? They could have had you have like a weekly lunch with your daughter. Like, they literally did not have to write anything for you. There are lots of different ways they could have handled it. The vaccine policy probably gave them a good excuse. So there was this case where there was an offensive tweet about President Lyndon Johnson. Somebody was tweeting about President Lyndon Johnson, who's been dead since 1969. All right. The federal court found that a reasonable jury could conclude the DXC disagreed with the political views expressed in or suggested by the tweet and wanted to punish the plaintiff for discouraged from expressing similar. I have questions about how an offensive tweet about former Lyndon B. Johnson, who has not been president since 1916. No, he died in 1970. He was president until 69. Could be an offense. I have questions. The court decided it was up to the jury to decide whether an employee violated the law by firing an employee who attended the political protests. Yeah, but here's the thing. But they did not decide. They discussed recasting it. They didn't recast him. And they could have done whatever the fuck they wanted every 26 weeks. So I think they said his newest cycle had just started. I have to go back and look. I just think that's kind of interesting. Like, if you work in 26 cycles and I can get rid of you every 26 weeks, why don't they could just wait it out and recast you? Like, I'm curious. I also do think that this is probably his best argument, that it might be a jury might decide that. I don't know. I don't know enough about civil law, I guess, to say this, but like, again, I'm still 75-25. I think in their motion, ABC made an excellent argument for why most of the stuff should be heated. The producers of a daytime soap opera, I don't like the way you wrote that, do not have the First Amendment right to fire cast members whose political views they disagree with. No, but they do have a right to fire cast members whose political views are fucking up the viewership. There were literally people saying, I want to watch your show. And like 5 people watch this show now live. All right. They got it. Like, they can't be like alienating the viewers they got left. If you are a liability to the show. Like, I kind of think that there is an argument here. There was an age and gender discrimination complaint about a local weatherman. There was an anti-slap motion, and it got denied. Anti-slap is just basically a slap motion is when, so if I say something like, for example, if I call Frank Valentini and his cast of writers, as head of his team of writers, creatively bankrupt, moronic pieces of shit who couldn't be anywhere near a goddamn television show, much less running one of the old. If I continued in that vein, and then I got sued for defamation in California by one of those people, don't sue me. I got no money. That's it. I got no money. I could file an anti-slap motion because basically I'm being sued for you to shut me up, and because you just want me to stop calling you a creative bankrupt piece of shit. Anyway, so it does not bar a plaintiff from litigating an action that arises out of defendant's free speech. They can pursue a discrimination claim. So ABC did not file an anti-slap motion, and Ingo has presented evidence sufficient to a jury to decide. I'm sure. ABC was sued, saying that they discriminated against minorities when making casting decisions for The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. The court declined to extend racial discrimination laws in that context because doing so would wreak havoc on the industry. The legality of any network targeting the particular demographic groups would be called into question. There's no concern here. GH is not a show about liberals or COVID fanatics. I have questions about that statement. Not a show about liberals or COVID fanatics, and ABC has not presented any evidence that Ingo's political commentary had any impact on the ratings. What about politics has not affected GH's ratings? Right, but they could probably produce a decent amount of tweets from people saying, "Fuck you, I'm not watching anymore until you get rid of this dickhead." Right? So I'm just saying they didn't, but then they didn't, but Ingo did, and ABC could just be like, "Yeah, but that guy already." There is proof that people stopped watching because of him. So maybe it didn't affect ratings overall, but it definitely was, a thing. Contract-based claims should also proceed to a trial. He signed a contract to play Jax for a specified term. That term ended in June 2022. No, once again, he is not stating his contract fairly. His contract was for 3 years, and each year was divided into 26 cycles, right? No, so 26-week cycles. So he had 2 cycles of 26. So 6 altogether. At the end of every, and this is something that you see in newer, it used to be 13-week cycles, and I think that's like for shorter contracts, probably. They did not terminate his contract early, as Valentini contemplated either. Thus, the jury couldn't find that he's entitled for damages for breach of contract. Probably not, because they didn't breach the contract. They fired you under a policy. They violated the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. The defendant must do more than simply not perform its contractual obligations. Ingo has presented evidence that ABC intended to renew his contract for at least 1 year. All he did was discuss it. And then, this is a great line, and this is the first time, then, after Ingo was criticized by a fellow cast member and the social media mob for praising Trump and opposing restrictive COVID policies, GH's writers and producers suddenly ran out of ideas for his character. If it makes you feel better, they also suddenly run out of ideas for Elizabeth all the time, and Becky doesn't say shit. So rather than acknowledge that because it was worried about getting sued, ABC used Disney's vaccine policy with its sham of an accommodation process to dump him. But it's not a sham because people were accommodated. Just GH didn't personally do anybody. I don't know. ABC may disagree with this interpretation of the evidence, but a jury could decide that a company acted in bad faith to deprive Ingo. God, I wonder if Steve Burton was deposed. I know I'm obsessed with it. But here's my thing. We have 2 high-profile actors being fired on the same day for the same reason. And both are arguably, in their own ways, popular pieces of the GH legacy. Whether you like it or not, Jax is part of that Sonny, Brenda, Jax triangle, which is the last triangle that show ever did that didn't suck monkey balls, right? And you've got Jason, who is basically part of the majority of, I think only one of his pairings. I'm not calling Britt a pairing. She was a one-night stand who blackmailed him for a toothbrush. Out of his 3 major pairings as Jason Morgan, hold on, let me count that again. He had 4 major pairings as Jason Morgan. 3 of them were wildly popular, right? Wildly popular. Jason and Sam, Jason and Robin, Jason and Elizabeth. And then the 4th one would be Jason and Courtney, and we don't talk about Jason and Courtney. We don't talk about Bruno, all right? And Jason and Brett, I guess, had 6 fans. But basically, you had 2 high-profile members of the cast who were both relatively popular in their own ways, who were, on the show. And Steve Burton, arguably, in a more high-profile position. He was on, all the fucking time. We were arguing about it all the time. He was on way too much, right? He gets fired for the exact same thing. They both get fired for the exact same thing, right? And one of them goes off quietly into the good night, and now he's on Days of Our Lives acting, and and Ingo's on Tucker Carlson. And I just think that that's kind of interesting, and I find it really hard to believe that his name isn't anywhere in here. Other people are name dropped about it because he was denied as well, right? And I just think it's weird that Ingo doesn't bring him up. I just think it's funny. All right, so there we are. That took 2 hours. That was a lot longer than I wanted it to, but that's fine. I feel better. I am tickled pink about the whole that one clip that was really funny. There's no religion to join. But I'm tired. It's 7 o'clock and I have to work tomorrow. So if you watch this later, please like the video or comment below how did you like it. If you guys ever find anything else that you want me to read, if there's any other documents available, I'll read it. I will pay attention to this hearing. I will see if I can get any records on it. Because the minute orders are usually like 1 or 2 pages, I'll buy that and then we can go over that when it comes out. All right. But thank you so much, and I will see you guys some other time. Bye.